members and leaders to talk about school funding. I will be emceeing the press conference. My name is June Rose. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Council. And we will be starting off with remarks from three of our council leaders: our council president, Rachel Miller, our chairwoman of finance, Helen Anthony, and our majority whip and member of the Committee on Finance, Miguel Sanchez. After they deliver remarks, we will be taking questions from members of the media. So we'll be starting off with Council President Rachel Miller, who represents Ward 13.
Thank you, June, and thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. The City Council has identified an immediate allocation of $2.5 million from unanticipated pilot payments and a reallocation of American Rescue Plan Act dollars that can be sent to Providence Public School Department. $2.5 million fully covers the threatened devastating cuts of $1.7 million from student athletics and $700,000 in bus passes for students. So just want to review the last few weeks. On October 9th, PPSD gave Mayor Smiley 24 hours notice of a pending $10.9 million budget gap and threatened deeply harmful cuts to student-facing programming. Counselors, and I want to especially call out Councilman Miguel Sanchez and recognize him and thank him for his leadership. He worked to identify the full $2.5 million that would fully cover those cuts. Last Monday, on October 21st, I met with PPSD leadership, including the superintendent, to share that we identified that funding. On October 23rd, last Wednesday, we received a letter from the superintendent saying that $2.5 million was insufficient and that PPSD was planning on, quote unquote, moving forward with implementing the difficult decisions we have communicated to the city. Those difficult decisions are devastating cuts to students and their families. I responded on Friday, October 25th, with a letter that said very clearly that no is not a conceivable answer when we're talking about the well-being and success of our students, and we can provide everyone with these letters that I mentioned. We've approached PPSD as a partner in solving a problem that we all face together, namely keeping programs that focus on student success fully intact. We cannot help PPSD solve budget issues or move forward and solve structural budget problems that occur year after year if we don't work together and have full insight into PPSD's budget. So since the start of the state takeover, the city has not had a line item budget for Providence Public Schools. At the same time, I've been made aware of budget practices at PPSD that give me grave concern. So most recently, it was confirmed that the Providence Public School Department overspent last year's budget by over $20 million. We have a firm obligation to students, to residents, and to all taxpayers to make sure that funds are wisely and responsibly allocated. So to move forward with this $2.5 million in allocation and with any further funding conversations, which we are open to, we're asking for an independent third-party financial review. And so just that very top line, that includes a review of year-over-year spending, an assessment of how resources are distributed between and among schools, an examination of cost control practices, an analysis of short and long-term cash flow projections. But the real thing here, right, like our students, the families, the residents, need all of us together, the city, PPSD, and RIDE, to be the adults in the room, to protect programming and support for students. And it's vitally important that we do that as partners who are working together to solve a problem that we face together, not as legal adversaries or as political adversaries. So City Council will take up this $2.5 million allocation in the Finance Committee on November 7th, which is getting very close to the last possible day that we can obligate American Rescue Plan Act dollars. We were hoping to take that up tonight, but we have not received an answer yet from PPSD. And I am not taking no for an answer, right? When it comes to outcomes for our students, when it comes to responding to a financial emergency, when it comes to putting our students first, no is inconceivable. And I just want to speak directly to the parents and students and advocates, who, so many of whom have reached out to City Council and other city leaders over the last couple of weeks, and thank them deeply for their advocacy, thank them for speaking up on their own behalves, and really strongly encourage all of us to unite around a message of no being not a conceivable answer. There's money on the table, and we look forward to solving this problem together.
So to be clear, you don't have a deal with PPSD.
If we're going to take questions after the remarks. After all the remarks. Next up to speak, we have Chairwoman on the Committee on Finance, Helen Anthony, who represents Ward 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My job as the Chair of Finance is to vet the budgets. And so that is what we did, as you know, in the spring, approved them in June, July. During the city's FY 2025 budget, we fought for an additional $2.5 million on top of what the mayor had proposed, which was $3 million. So we were giving PPSD a total of $5.5 million in an increase in their budget. This is the largest budget for PPSD, the largest boost in the last 15 years. And this came after 7 straight years of level funding. So the council is very, very serious about solving our education issues. And I will tell you, after running the process, this is my second year during the budget process, that the councilors made it clear from the very beginning that they were concerned that the schools didn't have enough money. So we did everything we could to look at the budget at that point and propose the additional increase. It's something that I think we're committed to continuing to do. I think it's very hard for the city to respond to a demand to fill a $10.9 million budget gap. In the middle of a year, we've already budgeted our funds for the city, so it's not easy to find the additional funds. And I also will thank my fellow councilor Miguel Sanchez for doing his due diligence and possibly identifying some funds that could be reallocated. But this is a big deal. I mean, this is very hard to do midstream. And we are very, very committed to trying to, during the next budget season, to get ahead of this, to start working a little more collaboratively so that we can continue to address what people are saying is an underfunding or consistent underfunding, and I agree, of our schools. So I just want to say that we're doing our job. We're going to continue to do our job, and we are looking forward to working collaboratively with PPSD.
Next up, we have our Majority Whip and member of the Committee on Finance, Councilman Miguel Sanchez, who represents the 6th Ward.
Thank you, June. Thank you all for being here. The media plays a very important role in getting information out to families, and that's what we want to do here today, is to let the people of Providence know that the City Council is extremely concerned with the presented mitigation costs that PPSD has presented. So when those were publicized about 3 weeks ago now at a Providence School Board Finance Committee, I started making calls to some of my colleagues, to parents in my neighborhood, to know that we are aware of what is going on, and more importantly, we care and are going to do our best, even on top of all the challenges that the city already is facing financially, that sports and bus passes being an option of being terminated in the middle of the year is completely unacceptable. As a younger person on the council, I remember recently, not even a decade ago, playing sports in high school, and I could be a testimony that sports in general saved my life. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for organized sports growing up, so I know how important sports and extracurricular activities are, on top of just the basic of getting to school. We hear all this chatter of how important attendance is, and to even consider cutting public transportation passes to our students. And in my opinion, it's completely acceptable. So we want to make it clear that the City Council is very active and involved in finding funds to specifically plug those presented gaps at this moment, and more clearly, or more importantly, that we're willing to be partners. As the council president mentioned, there's a lot of mudslinging happening, and we want to get past the point, because at the end of the day, who is impacted the most and who suffers the most is the kids of our city, and that is just a tragedy that we need to stop right now and move forward in a different direction. So I just want to thank my colleagues on the council, our staff that has been scrambling these past couple weeks and days to get to the point where we are now. We want to have a productive conversation going forward. We want PPSD and RIDE to agree to the audit with these financial dollars. We want them to go to serve sports and to prevent any of these cuts that would be a tragedy. And lastly, my council president mentioned of thanking families and students for their advocacy. I also want to apologize that we're even in this place going forward. I think it's important to acknowledge some of the past councils and mayors' choices when it came to funding our schools. So we acknowledge that. I acknowledge that is completely unacceptable. But what can we do now is commit to the families and students of the city that going forward, like we did just this past fiscal year, to significantly increase those funds, and that's something that we want to do starting out. Thank you.
Our counselors are now available for questions from members of the media.
So just to be clear, you offered this money to PPSD, but they have not agreed to use it to save sports and bus passes?
That is correct. They haven't agreed to opening up their book. They haven't responded to the letter that I sent on Friday. And so, yes, sorry. So as of right now, PPSD initially last week said that what we were offering was insufficient and that they would move forward essentially with the cuts that were proposed. I wrote back and said, no is not a reasonable answer. We haven't heard back from them since then.
But is it those two items that you want them to spend the money on?
Yes.
And will you pass the money without a promise from them that they're going to use it to save sports specifically?
As of right now, I'm looking forward to a response to this invitation to partner with us to solve student-facing cuts.
And then what about this court case where they're going to maybe withhold tax money from the city, car tax reimbursement money? Are you willing to still reallocate this ARPA money if they withhold the car tax money?
So that is ongoing in court. I was really clear with PPSD leadership last week that if we had to fill a $8.5 million hole in the city budget, that this conversation, right, like we can't have both conversations at once.
Council President, question for you. Is the council going to put forth legislation at the Assembly to return the schools to the city of Providence? Obviously, it's been years since the Johns Hopkins report. We've seen very little improvement with the Providence schools. Is this something the city council would take up?
If folks could just share their name and their outlet.
Yeah, Kate Nagel with Go Local.
So right now and tonight we are talking about keeping funding in place for student programming. I know I've been very clear on the record in the past about wanting a sooner return to local control than is currently on the path.
So would you consider legislation this coming Assembly session?
For this coming Assembly session, I can't answer that today.
Counselors and the school department have they had any in-person or face-to-face meetings, or has it just been communicating with each other?
We met together on Monday, and the school department leadership met with the chief of staff and other city council office leaders on Tuesday of last week, and we've met multiple times over the past few months.
What's the tone been like? It seems like it's pretty cold.
Yeah, I agree. So this is the thing that is, I think we have a real opportunity to get past, right? Where we are adversaries in a moment when, frankly, like our students need us to be the opposite, right? It doesn't serve our schools, it doesn't serve our school communities, it doesn't serve the teachers who are working to make our school communities great. We genuinely need to be able to have open conversations. That includes being like fully transparent, right? Because we have an obligation to our constituents about every dollar that gets spent. And so when we're able to like kind of put everything on the table and say like, we recognize that there are significant issues. Councilor Sanchez just spoke to decades of underfunding our schools. We can't solve that in a single month. We can solve that if we put everything on the table, look at it together, and make a path forward.
I know the state has said continuously that the city has a rainy day fund and other kind of funds that they can pull from. Have you guys looked into those funds, or?
Can you just share your name and public?
Alex from Providence.
Thank you. So 2 pieces on that. Right now, we have $2.5 million offered and are waiting for a response on. So I want to make that clear. That doesn't mean that we are not open to full conversations about some of the other funding. Moving into that funding creates significant risks, including our bond rating, including putting city services and other things at risk. And so we need more time to have that full discussion. We need more information to have that full discussion. And that's what we're asking for today.
Council President, you talk about obviously wanting to get an audit from the state. How are you going to compel them to do that? What if we continue to find ourselves at this juncture of them not being fully transparent regarding all the information that you're seeking?
Well, I genuinely think that at the core, all of us are working in the interest of our students. I genuinely think that we all have this belief that we can overcome what has been a contentious and politically motivated debate between these two parties and sit down together and look at it together.
Clearly you have concerns, obviously the largest influx of federal funds that we've seen of mismanagement at the department level. Is that where you're asserting?
I have concerns about budgeting practices. I can't speak to like more specific concerns until we actually see the full picture.
And you expect to see that?
I do.
What does the $2.5 million be pulled away from?
Yeah, so this is some ARPA projects that warrant that the scope is completed or would be like that became undoable for a variety of reasons. And then $1 million, as previously discussed, with Mayor Smiley. This includes the $1 million pilot money that we weren't anticipating otherwise.
So 1.5 from ARPA.
1.5 from ARPA and $1 million from pilot.
From the other side.
Yep.
I know part of that deal kind of requires the state to also put in $3 million of their own budget. Talking to the state, they basically said, they haven't really answered whether or not they'd be willing to give that $3 million. So is this money still going to be offered even if the state doesn't give the $3 million?
I can't say enough times how much our students need us to stop kind of looking up and saying, what, who, me? I'm the one who needs to pay, right? Like, we really do all need to be in this together. We're putting this $2.5 million on the table for the students, for the cuts to students right now. We'll do that no matter what, but we need support from the state. We need clear transparency from PPSD in relation to their budget, and we need to work together to support our students.
John Perrick with NBC 10 here. The mayor had said that he would kick in $1 million if the state gave $3 million. Is Mayor Smiley still going to kick in $1 million?
So the $2.5 million includes the $1 billion that Mayor Smiley already discussed. We very much are looking for the state to also do its part. But I'm trying to say at this point in time, we can't everyone can't keep pointing to someone else in the room, right? That like the city's gonna step up and do its part. We're gonna ask for state partnership. We're gonna ask for the Providence Public Schools to also do its part.
And for so many parents, sports teams, right? You're heading to December. It was important to keep sports teams on the table here. So why was that a priority for the city council?
I think Councilor Sanchez spoke best to it. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, sports does many things for our students, but one thing it does is keeps them motivated in school. It keeps them out of the streets, which is also something that I'm very passionate about, is community violence intervention. Sports is a form of that. As you could probably read this morning, Dan McGowan had mentioned the basketball team of Classical, their season being in question. But the fact that even is being discussed in the city where I'm a city councilor, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. So that's why I have been working with my colleagues, with our staff, to identify money to plug those presented. I think it's also important that we speak that RIDE and PPSD has presented these mitigation costs. This is something that they have presented as final decisions, which is also something that is concerning, is what led up to these decisions. We don't know if $1.7 million is the actual cost of winter and spring sports, but we're taking their word for it, and that's why we have identified this money to plug those presented cuts.
And what if it's not? What if it's not the cost? Or what if you're going to need more?
So this is the problem that we're in, right? Is that there are too many unknowns. And our most fundamental obligation as city councilors is the accounting and budgeting for city government. Like, we got to be able to say where taxpayer money is going, and we really can't help unless we have a full picture of that. So we can't answer that question.
Do you think this is a bluff? I mean, you see this, a lot of schools use this tactically saying, we're going to cut sports when they need more money, and the parents get outraged, and everyone gets outraged, and it gets fixed.
I think that if we are working together earnestly to solve problems in front of students, we got to take everyone at their word. And so, you know, making assumptions about like what's politically motivated or otherwise doesn't actually help us serve our students best. I'd also like to thank the President Pro Tem Pichardo and Majority Leader Espinal for joining us today. Any further questions?
Can you give some of those comments in Spanish as well for our Spanish-speaking audience?
Would you like to, or anyone? All right.
Entonces, lo que estamos hablando hoy es que el Consejo de la Ciudad de Providence ha presentado $2.5 millones de dólares para cubrir los gastos que las escuelas de Providence están diciendo que no hay fondos. Entonces, para los deportes, para el tiempo de invierno y la primavera. Teamwork on the council. And los fondos para los pases de buses para los estudiantes públicos. Entonces, lo que estamos diciendo ahorita es que el consejo ha encontrado ese dinero y necesitamos las escuelas que estén de acuerdo en aceptando ese dinero.
Para añadir eso, el mensaje es que el consejo aquí en la ciudad de Providence está abogando y también siguiéndole al departamento de escuela que venga a la mesa a hablar y buscar las soluciones para tratar de el tema del déficit que tiene. Igualmente no es justo de que los deportes o actividades para los estudiantes se corten, como dijo el concejal Sánchez, porque es importante de que los niños y los jóvenes tengan esos deportes y que no se corten, porque se entiende que es lo más básico que se le puede brindar a los estudiantes y más en los deportes. Y por último, es estar seguro de que esto es una colaboración también con los fondos que el alcalde acaba de indicar también, que es una suma que todavía falta dinero, pero que le estamos pidiendo al departamento de escuela que venga a la mesa, que hablemos sobre las soluciones y que acepte este dinero y a la misma vez que acepte el audito que se le está exigiendo al departamento de escuela para que haga transparencia.
¿Ustedes creen que van a llegar a un acuerdo antes de enero cuando dicen que es corte tan
La presidenta acaba de indicar que esperamos que sea antes de eso. Esperamos que esto ocurra en estos días, de que podemos hablar, porque estos fondos hay que decisión antes de hacerlo, que se limite el tiempo de alocarlo para diciembre.
¿Y cuál es su reacción al Estado diciendo que ya pusieron su parte y ya pusieron el dinero en los años que la ciudad?
Lo que se ha indicado aquí es de que es una colaboración que debemos de estar entre el Estado y igual que la ciudad. Y los tres entidades tenemos que estar seguros que vengamos a la mesa para discutir y hablar las soluciones adecuadas para que el presupuesto de las escuelas y también el futuro de nuestros hijos esté en un camino más brillante.
Speaking just now was President Pro Tempore Juan Pichardo, who represents Ward 9. We have time for one or two final questions, if there are any.
One, Tom Mooney with the Journal. Just to be clear, the 2.5 the city is offering is not contingent on any state money coming in right now.
It's not contingent on state money. It would be part of the ARPA, but again, I think we are saying, yes, the state has to commit more, the city can and will commit more, right? It has to be a partnership together.
But it sounds like it is contingent to the district actually saying they're going to use it to save sports, right?
We would like to see that. We'd also really do need a full picture of their financials.
You have to wait until the court situation is resolved about the car tax?
That hearing has been postponed until November 6th.
And
Stay before the meeting when we're going to talk about it.
Is it sports only or sports and RIPTA?
Sports and RIPTA.
And I'm just looking at the letter here. The superintendent says this offer is completely insufficient to meet the growing needs of PPSD. Insufficient.
So here's where I respond, right? It is not a final offer. We are not two parties in a contentious negotiation. We are partners looking to do what we can in the middle of a budget year in a city that doesn't have a lot of frills in its budget, right? To meet emergent needs for our students. And so no is insufficient. It's inconceivable to say no to $2.5 million that could stop cuts to athletics and transportation. I can't make sense of that. That's why we're not moving forward today.
So essentially, this offer, you're prioritizing the top two things that parents really care about: school buses and sports.
And things that impact students' life now. That doesn't mean that we won't continue to have this conversation throughout the year. But as I said, to find money, large chunks of money in the middle of a budget year is almost impossible, right? So we're putting $2.5 million together right now and asking for continued partnership to further discuss student needs.
So for the superintendent to call it insufficient, that must be frustrating.
It was indeed, yeah.
that's all we have time for, folks. We'll meet back here on November 7th for a meeting of the Committee on Finance, where we'll be taking up the ARPA ordinances. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. So the hearing was continued now. Thank you.
Because I knew it happened. Like, it didn't happen. Right. So I figured you need to know if we're getting that money with us before we do anything. Yeah. How much is that?